This is Love Never Fails with your host, Marilyn Redmond. Marilyn shares her experience, strength, and hope, and includes tools to help you find your inner strength for health, healing, and empowerment. So now, please welcome the host of Love Never Fails, Marilyn Redmond.
I am your host, Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails. This is coming to you on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Welcome, everybody, to Love Never Fails. We're so glad you're listening today. We're gaining a big audience. Tell all your friends about all the different topics we have. It's a wide range of information, and they can call in anytime with their questions to 866-451-1451. This is a live radio talk show, and you can be on the air. Some people have actually emailed me questions, which we bring up at times on our show. And it's just as fun or more fun to have you really on the air asking your questions, because if you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question. So in a few moments, I'll be introducing Judith Stevens from the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and she's in charge of the prison program there. So if you have any questions in that regard, or you want to ask somebody about that kind of information, we're going to have Judith Stevens on in just a minute. Call 866-451-1451. If you have questions, just give us a call. And I want to remind you that we have archives of our old programs on Bold Brave Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And on the internet, you can click into the archives and see what the old programs were if you missed some, because they actually are kind of going in a sequence, if you have noticed. And so today we're going to be talking about the prison program and how that we can help people in those situations improve their lives so they can have a healthier, better life too. So as we explore this world today, she's going to offer you a free book at the end of the program. So stay tuned to the end, get the information, how you get your free book, and it might be just very helpful for you to read. It's a wonderful book. I have read it. And so now I would like to have you meet and join with Judith Stevens, and we're so happy to have you here, Judith.
I'm so delighted to be here, Marilyn.
Well, thank you for agreeing to be on the show. I've never had anyone in your position before, so I'm real eager to hear what you have to say and share with us today.
Well, fire away. I'll do the best I can.
Well, first of all, maybe we'd like to know a little bit about you. Could you maybe give a short little bio of where you came from, what's going on in your life when all of this kind of came together down the pike?
Yes, I'll be glad to do that. In 1968, I literally landed on the doorstep of the Edgar Cayce Foundation, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, also called the A.R.E. by some people, and I needed a job, and I didn't know really what it was, and when I applied for the job, they had me type up an Edgar Cayce reading, which I had never really seen before. And as you know, Marilyn, from studying them for years, some of those sentences go on and on and on, like they're paragraphs. You know, when he was in that sleeping state or that in-between state and was giving the information, it just seemed to flow from him. So when I was told to type the reading, I was told, don't change the punctuation, don't do anything, do it exactly as it is. So even though I wanted to add commas very badly, I didn't, and I typed it as it was, and 20 days later, I was working here at the A.R.E., and my first boss was Harold Allen, who had readings from Edgar Cayce. He and his wife, Eula Allen, who went on to write wonderful books on the Creation trilogy for the A.R.E., he would tell me stories about what Mr. Cayce was like, because Mr. Cayce died in 1945, and I was born after that, so I missed meeting him. But I feel as if I met him through my friend Harold. And as I was working here at the A.R.E. as Harold's assistant in the press, where we published most of our own books, I began to see a basket in the corner, and every now and then someone would drop a few letters in it. So finally I said, what is that? And they were letters from inmates, and no one was answering them. There was no one designated to do that, and it bothered me so much, I just started writing to the people in those letters, and before I knew it, it took off. A friend, the prison grapevine is just wild. It goes wild, and once they find out that you will answer their letters and send them free books, which we initiated, the letters just started coming in a huge shower. And anyway, by the time I moved to the study group department in 1972 here, I brought the prison program with me and really incorporated it into the study group program. And I went to all the local authors, Elsie Sechrist, Gina Terminara, Marianne Woodard, Hugh Lynn Cayce, everybody, and I said, please, will you give me some of your books? I don't have any money to buy the books, and people want them in prison. They were wonderful. They gave me books. And then I talked to Herald and the press, and they agreed to give me any damaged copies that were slightly unevenly cut, or there was any sort of problem with them where they couldn't sell it for the full price. They came to me, and that is how the prison program started.
Oh, what a wonderful story. It's kind of like it found you.
It did find me, and later in my life, I realized I had been sent to the A.R.E. to start the prison program. Not that I knew that at the time, of course, or even believed I could do it, but that's how God works. He places you, or she places you, where you can do what you're supposed to do, and that's what I did.
Well, that's kind of how my life has occurred, too. I found myself in places I didn't expect to be. Like my first radio show, I never expected to be on the air, and the station manager said, you have the job, and I didn't even know there was an opening. So we find ourselves in unusual places. That was the last thing on my agenda at that time in my life. And of course, it was probably not on your agenda when you showed up at the A.R.E.
No, it wasn't, but I tell you this, when I started visiting prisons and going in and starting these small meditation groups in the prisons and jails that would allow us, I never had any fear or trepidation. I thought perhaps in another lifetime I had been imprisoned, and my soul remembered that and now wanted to help those who were in this lifetime.
Well, I think that happens to a lot of us. I think that's how I got involved with your prison program, and I'm going to share about that in a little bit. Your first program you called Over the Wall. How did you come up with that name?
Well, at the time, Richard Bach's book was out, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and he actually came here. He came here and spoke at the A.R.E., and I loved the symbol of the gull because I thought, even though many of us can't go into prison literally, the bird could fly over the wall. The books can fly over the wall. We can get the material over the wall to the people who want and need it, and that's where the name came from.
Well, that's a wonderful story. You've told me in some information you sent me that this is impressive to me, you are in 50 states, Canadian provinces and territories, and international countries. You have expanded from that little basket of letters, it sounds like.
Isn't it wonderful? Yes, I have. And we never say no to anyone. Anyone who calls us, writes us, contacts us, shows up here and needs books for their prison or jail, they go away with an armful, a box full. And I'm always calling people around the country to get permission from their chaplains or wardens or whomever to give me permission to get those books in there.
Well, it's wonderful that you have so much support. We are going to be returning with Judith Stevens and more stories about how you can help inmates in the prison program and how you can connect with her. So you are listening to Love Never Fails. I'm your host, Marilyn Redmond, and you are coming live from BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay tuned. I am your host, Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails, and we are coming to you on the BBM Global Network and and TuneIn Radio. And we are having a wonderful talk with Judith Stevens from the A.R.E, All Association for Research and Enlightenment. And they sponsor a prison program, which we're talking about today. So we have some curious questions here, Judith. Tell us about, you mentioned the study groups that you went into the prisons with. Do you want to tell people about that?
Oh, I'd love to. The study groups are small discussion groups, and we use a book called A Search for God, Book 1 and 2, and these books were given by Edgar Cayce to the first study group, who used them with great success. They asked Mr. Cayce, how can we be psychic like you? And he began to give this series of readings called the 262 readings, and they became the study group readings. And when they looked at them, they said, wait a minute, cooperation? Know thyself? What is my ideal? We want to be psychic. But of course, you can't be psychic unless you know how to cooperate with others, with yourself, with the world. You can't be psychic until you become to know yourself and are willing to get rid of the things in you that irritate other people. And that's the work of the small group. So at one time, I had over 100 groups in San Quentin Prison in California. We had them in Lucasville, Ohio. We had them across the country in major prisons and jails, minimum and maximum security prisons. And these were small groups of 10 to 12 men and women in women's prisons or men's prisons who met with an outside sponsor, an A.R.E member who had agreed to go in and meet with the group. And this was the biggest blessing of all, to be in those groups. And I went around the country getting them started and visiting them once they were up and running. There was one in Tennessee where the whole study group, the outside people, came to every meeting with the inmates. That was great. They took me across the prison yard to that group, and it was a wonderful meeting. In Texas, I was met by an A.R.E member who had been in prison, a member of that study group, gotten out, was the president of the JCs, turned his life around, and said that that study group and this material actually changed his life and got him from one track to another. So I saw firsthand the incredible power of these small groups to help people, to motivate them, to give them discipline and courage to make these changes in themselves so that they could then go on and have a different kind of life. And I'm happy to tell you, Marilyn, that we have people show up on our doorstep just to say thank you when they get out of prison. They may drive from several states away just to say thank you. We have people who send us their GED and tell us that we were instrumental in helping them get on a path to getting their high school education or take all these courses that they were able to be offered, and now their life is going in a totally different trajectory. And of course, that's the purpose of the program. It's to help people to throw a lifeline and say, you are a child of God. You know, you have worth and value. We believe you can do this. We will help you. And so we do through our books, through the small groups that we're able to set up in the prisons and jails, and Marilyn, through people like you who have a big enough heart to say, yes, I will write to someone in prison on a one-to-one basis. I will be a sounding board for someone else. I will be a friend and an encourager. You know, I'm not going to be a patsy or a pushover. I'm going to say it like I see it, but I am going to be a friend, and I'm going to help this person, inspire them, and bring hope back into their lives.
Well, thank you for that. I really enjoy mentoring someone in the prisons. I have actually gone into a local prison. I was invited to go to the study group in the Monroe Reformatory in our state, but and go in with their group at one point. But it was such a long drive; it was a little hard to put it all together. But I know that locally we have that study group available, and at least it was at that time in the Monroe prison. So, you know, what I'm seeing is that these people need to touch base with those outside, that they know that they are worthy people. The funny part in my reaching out to the fellow that I'm writing to now, I was having a kind of a down day. It wasn't a terrible day, but just kind of in the blues. Things weren't real perky that day. And I came home and there was the letter in the mailbox, and I thought, well, I'll open it and see what he has to say. His letter was so bright and shiny and happy about where he was what he was doing and what was going on. It cheered me up. I mean, here's somebody writing me from a situation where I know he's in there for life, and he was such a happy person in that letter. That made my day. And so when you're reaching out to somebody else, you don't really know it's going to come back to you. And in that case, it came back and cheered me up. The rest of the evening, I thought, oh, well, if he can be so happy in his situation, I guess I don't need to be gloomy today.
I know exactly what you mean. I tell you, I get some of these letters. Let me just read you this little tiny exit here that just came in the mail. It says,
right.
It feels nice to write a letter that's not filled by fears, complaints, and victim stance. I am doing well, and I'm writing this letter to you to thank you for believing in me, even when I had no belief in myself. Your prayers, meditations, booklets, and correspondence have left me in a better place with a better look and brighter look on the future life, and I thank you all.
Well, that's
nice?
the kind. Oh, that's beautiful. Your brochure has some really wonderful testimonies to that, such as one that you sent me was from Bobby Ray Davis in Texas. And he was talking about being in prison for 10 years and leaving because the Search for God groups helped him so much that his life had changed around. And at the end, he said, the gift that says that with the right ideal, nothing can limit you. And that's what I think we learn in participating in this program is we're helping people go beyond their limitations. And they have probably not been told it's even possible.
Exactly. Many of them, if you could hear the stories, many of them have been beaten and abused as children. And, it's so easy to understand how they would get on a wrong pathway when you don't have a spiritual ideal, you don't have a person there to look up to help you. And so once they find themselves in this dark place, and that's really what prison is, it's St. John's dark night of the soul in spades. And so here they are, and someone reaches out, and then someone begins to draw them out. And like, for instance, we have prison artists who send us the most remarkable art. Most of them are untrained. They've taught themselves, and they are doing wonderful work. We're collecting it to do an exhibit for a big conference we're having in our June Congress when people come from around the world. I'm going to show them this beautiful artwork, these poetry things that have been sent to me, and other stuff.
Well, that's a great thing to do. We're going to take a break, Judith, and come back and talk some more about this wonderful work of reaching out to those in prison. I am Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails, and we are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I am Marilyn Redmond, and this is Love Never Fails. We're coming to you on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We are so honored today to have Judith Stevens with us from the Edgar Cayce Foundation. A.R.E. is the letters for Association for Research and Enlightenment. But if you're a member of the A.R.E., you always tell yourself, always ready to eat. That's kind of the joke around the program, right, Judith?
Absolutely.
Always ready to eat. So we have lots of good food around. And so if people have questions about what we're talking about today, please call in at 866-451-1451. And you were talking about how valuable the study groups were in the prisons for people. And I do want them to know there is a difference between religion and spirituality or metaphysics or looking at the spirit world, the invisible world. And that's what we're talking about today. This is not a religion. This is something that is beyond religion. And we have another quote from a prison inmate that said, it seems like everyone who becomes involved in the study group here makes parole the first time before the board. So far, none of the men involved has returned to prison. I think this speaks well of the study group and A Search for God material. And this was a man involved with the Department of Corrections in Texas. So that speaks very highly and supports, Judith, what you were saying about how important it is for people to get this information.
Well, it's been shown that when people are inside a prison or jail and they're allowed to participate in an A.R.E. study group, that the disciplinary infractions are reduced within that particular facility. And the first people to notice the changes, of course, are the guards, because they're there every day with the inmates, and the warden, and the people who work with them. And it's amazing how when they settle into the material and start to really work on themselves and see that they can make changes, and that those changes are going to be the difference between perhaps they're staying in prison a lot longer or maybe getting out a little sooner, because they're going to be better material when they go before the parole board. It's just amazing how that happens.
Well, one of the things that I've learned about myself is I have to know more about what's going on with me inside. And the search for study groups help me to identify what is going on with me so I can make changes. I can look at it step back and say, well, this isn't working. What can I do differently? And that's, the fellow I write, he's been writing me just this last letter about his dreams. And the dreams can be so important for helping you to see, oh, this is something that needs to get my attention. Because
exactly.
they're really about your consciousness. Your subconsciousness needs to express itself. And so when you get that message and you can have some understanding of what the message is, then you can use it to make your life even better, because you're not in the dark, so to speak. You turn on the light.
Exactly. And a lot of what we do is help people learn how to meditate, because all of the study groups, you learn how to meditate, and once you know how to go within, then prison becomes a lot more manageable. Prison becomes easier in a way once you learn how to meditate. And I can't tell you how many inmates write me and say, I get up at 2:30 a.m., I get up at 3:15 a.m., I get up at the time when it's the quietest in prison and nothing is happening, and that's when they meditate. And of course, they learn that when they make that connection to the divine within, everything starts to change in their lives. Everything improves and gets better. It's hard to explain the how of it, but you and I know from our own experiences and how our lives have turned around for the better that it works.
Well, it certainly has worked in my life. I've been in Search for God groups for probably around 20 years at this point, or longer. And so I'm very much into the meditation, and I had the surprise of my life, which is really, I think, probably one of the big reasons I'm so involved with your work, or try to be, is that I had a secret I didn't tell anybody. And in my meditation this weekend, the rage of that problem, I was in domestic violence, raised in it, and married it. And the issues that went along with that kind of a situation, I was enraged. Didn't really even know I had that deep of rage. But in my meditation, it came up this weekend, scared the dickens out of me, because I've always tried to be a pretty pleasant person. And I'm not real, in my case, I've had to learn how to have feelings. And so that rage came up, and what I realized was, I've known this intellectually for several years, but it was only by the grace of God I'm not in prison. The rage from all the abuse I went through, I wanted to kill my husband one night, and God literally stepped in and stopped that situation. I know there's a lot of issues about guns out there, but, in my case, I was going to use a knife. And the rage was just buried so deeply, and thank God I didn't act on it. And I know today the fellow I write to, he apparently has had some difficulty in childhood. The rage had just gotten to the point where he acted out on it. And when you can find out that you can release that energy and you don't have to live with it anymore, it's such a relief. I walked away feeling so much cleaner, and my shoulders were lighter, and it's like, wow, that's gone. But, it's important to have these study groups so you can have feelings and change your feelings and see a better motivation of coming from love. And when handle our lives from loving situations, we don't need the anger anymore. We don't need the rage. We don't need to act out on it because we aren't that person anymore. And for me, the Search for God study groups in person, or, in this case, we're carrying it to the message to people that aren't available to come to regular meetings. And it's so important to learn that we can change our lives, that we can change from that old messages of what we had maybe as a child and what happened in those experiences, and we can grow beyond it. And I'm finding out Christ consciousness is really another term for maturity and growing up. I don't have to be angry. I don't have to be in fear anymore. And Search for God has pointed it out to me that living in faith, and you mentioned cooperation, I want today to cooperate with that energy of love in the universe, because that's what brings good results.
Exactly. Well, I like the title of your program, Love Never Fails. And when I was thinking about it, I thought, isn't it interesting that that's the name of your program? And then I think what our work here is, I think that the sending of the books and the writing of the letters is just almost a foil for what we really do. What we're doing is we're loving people who've been told they're unlovable.
Well, I've discovered that other people are just a mirror to me. And if I can reach out to those situations with love and embrace the situation, it's not necessarily the person. I'm changing the energy within me. And it heals me to be a whole person. And so in helping somebody in prison, I'm healing that part of me that was so enraged and so angry that I did want to kill somebody. I don't have to keep that as part of who I am today. That's not who I am anymore anyway. So, we're really healing ourselves when we reach out to others. And so if people have books they want to contribute to you, or if they have interested in writing to an inmate, would you give us your address and information when we come back from this break?
Absolutely.
I am Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails, and we are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay tuned for Judith's information. I am Marilyn Redmond. This is Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio speaking to Judith Stevens about the A.R.E. prison program. Hopefully you're understanding that when we reach out to others, we're really helping ourselves. But guess what? The inmates need to know about help and different ways to handle their lives. And when you help change their understandings, then they can walk away and contribute to society just like we all want to do. Some people just didn't have the information. And this is what we're trying to bring to them today. And if you have books you want to contribute, Judith is looking for books, or if you want to financially contribute to this program, I do every month. And if you are interested in connecting with an inmate, Judith, what's your address, or how's the best way to reach you?
Okay, there's several ways. If you know someone who's in prison, if you have a loved one or an imprisoned friend, if you can email me at all lowercase, prison@edgarcayce.org. Again, prison@edgarcayce.org. I will get your email, and we will send books to your loved one. You will need to give us all their information, their name, their ID number, the name of the prison, and all of their address information. If you need to contact me directly for any reason, you can email me at judith.stevens@edgarcayce, one word, .org, all lowercase. Again, judith.stevens, S-T-E-V, like Virginia, E-N-S, @edgarcayce.org. If you're sending us books, the cheapest way is by media mail, and we would ask for your paperback and hardback books, and we will recycle them into prisons. If you send them to us, you can ship them to A.R.E. Prison Program, 215 67th Street, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23451. And as long as it has prison program or my name on it, I'll get it. And we'll get them into the prisons and find good homes for all of your books. All of the donations, if you would like to contribute to our program in any way, the books and postage is paid for from a fund that's been established by our members, like Marilyn and others who think that this is important work. I tithe to this program every month myself because I believe it's very, very important. And everything is tax deductible. We are a 501c3, so you get a tax deductible donation receipt for that. We do have a website. Any of you interested in finding out more about Mr. Cayce and the readings and the wealth of information that's here, and over almost 15,000 readings given by Mr. Cayce over a long period of time, you can go to our website, and that is capital E like Edgar, EDGAR, capital C like Cayce, CAYCE, that's one word, edgarcayce.org. And you'll find out about all of our programs, material, and all kinds of good stuff.
Well, thank you for that, Judith.
Our toll-free number is 800-333-4499, and my direct line is 1-757-457-7120.
Well, we really appreciate that information. And if you didn't have your pencil ready, we'll ask her one more time at the end of the program. So I'm very fortunate in that my books come from the publisher that I send to Judith. I don't even have to package them up. I just have the publisher send them straight to her, and it keeps me from having to go to the post office. So that works out terrific.
That's great.
So I like that. It makes life easy for me. Well, you know, Judith, you have so many things to share with us. What is your experience in the program as a correspondent mentor?
Well, I have been doing this since 1960. Well, we started the program in 72. I came to the A.R.E. in 68, but we began the prison program in 72. So I wrote and wrote and wrote and was here for 13 years writing to everyone. And what I found was I learned a lot from the inmates. I found in the early days that the lifers in prison took a real interest and protected many of the younger, smaller people in prison. And most of the people in our study groups, prison groups around the country, were protecting other people in their respective institution. And I really appreciated that. I thought that it's not that much different on the outside. We know there's a lot of bullying going on in our country today, which is so regrettable and so wrong. And the same thing, of course, happens in a lockdown situation. But I've learned from the people that I have worked with. In fact, I got a note the other day from one of our correspondents. He's in a prison in Robinson, Illinois, and he was so happy because he had just gotten his GED. So he wrote his pen pal who works with me here. She's one of my volunteers, and he wrote to me to let us be the first to know that he'd gotten it. And then he told us what he's doing each day, and I thought this was so inspirational. I really want to share it with your listeners. He said, I'm reading from his letter, he said, I continue to read my King James Version every day, 3 chapters, and then a section from A Search for God to start my day. I've been focusing on meditation early in the morning between 2:30 a.m. and 4:15 a.m. So here's this young man who has bettered himself by going to prison. And you know, the Cayce readings say that if you find yourself in prison or anywhere, that's where you have come to learn certain lessons. And I know this is a hard, bitter pill for people to swallow who think, well, I don't want to be locked up. Why am I in here? But it's to re-examine the steps that brought you there and look at what needs changing and then begin to make those changes. So many people tell me who get out of prison, if I hadn't gotten into prison and gotten those books and turned my life around, you know, I wouldn't be the same person. I wouldn't have gotten out of prison as early as I did. And this has been said over and over by people to me.
Well, I find that the situations that show up in our life really are there to show us how to do it differently and change our energy from the fear-based past situations we've been involved with into a loving, forgiving future. And so I do past life regression, and you'll recognize Henry Bolduc was my teacher. And I flew to Virginia Beach to learn from him how to do that. And past lives has a lot to do with where you are today. They're coming up in various ways with a lot of people. I have a lot of people coming to me for past life regression because we can heal that old energy. You don't have to keep it in your system and cause destruction to your life, and it can be healed. So if you don't know where it's coming from on your current life, maybe it's down under the surface where you haven't looked before. And it's like the iceberg, look under the top of the iceberg to what you don't see that's running your life. And you can also heal it that way through doing past life therapy. So, these things are coming to the surface to get our attention, and we can move into a much better place.
Yes, and I would like to ask your listeners if they would be kind enough to pray for our prison outreach program, the A.R.E. prison outreach program, because we pray daily here, every day from 12 to 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, so 3 hours different from you. But we're praying every single day, and the prison program is on that prayer list, and that means the wardens, the chaplains, the guards, the inmates, their families. I got an email from a 15-year-old young girl who wrote to ask for free books for her mother. She said that her mother was in prison and she had no money. Would we be able to send her some books? And I wrote her back immediately and said, we've got your mother on our prayer list. We're sending her Dreams Your Magic Mirror, Toward a Deeper Meditation, Your Life, Why It Is the Way It Is, and What You Can Do About It, Universal Laws.
Oh, that's a wonderful book. I love that book. In fact, we're going to talk about it on our upcoming session one of these weeks, and so thanks for mentioning it. We're going to stop here for a minute and come back and find out about the prisons are cracking down on what inmates can receive. So stay tuned and find out how things are changing with Judith Stevens. And I am Marilyn Redmond. I am your host of Love Never Fails, and we are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. All right, this is your host, Marilyn Redmond, and you are listening to Love Never Fails on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And we are having a lively discussion today with Judith Stevens about prison work, and the A.R.E. sponsors this particular program, is doing a miraculous job helping people that are inmates be able to leave and not have to return. They can change their life to contribute to society rather than be detrimental. What a life-changing experience this can be. So if you want to contribute and help out in this program, you're really helping yourself. And we'll give you some more information. She'll repeat her information to contact her in just a minute. But it's interesting, Judith, that apparently, I've learned the hard way that even libraries are mentoring what books and censoring what books they allow to be provided from the public into the library. And sadly, some books have been rejected as far as Edgar Cayce books, actually, being admitted and put on the shelves for libraries. What is the problem going on with the prisons that they're censoring books and causing difficulties?
Here's what we're noticing, and this is kind of around the country. We're noticing more of a closing down in certain ways. For instance, in Indiana, we've been notified that a major prison where we have 60 inmates that we are sending books to can no longer receive books. And they say it's because there's a drug problem, and somehow the drugs are getting in the books and people are wetting the pages and getting high or whatever. But they are punishing everyone in the prison for maybe one or two people who may be trying to do that, and we think it's wrong. And many prisons are saying they send back our books and our little booklets and anything we send, and they nitpick. They say no staples. They say no colored paper. They say too many pages. Imagine that. You send something and they tell you that it's too many pages. They say it can't have any color on it. It has to be black and white. So we are doing the best we can to accommodate all of the myriad rules in the many prisons and jails. Jails are like a kingdom to themselves. Nobody tells them what to do, and they can say no books if they want to. And that, to me, is almost a denial of First Amendment rights. I mean, you should be able to receive books. If you ask us for books and we're giving them free, you should be able to get them. That is my bottom line opinion. And so those are some of the challenges that we are facing. But I do have, if anybody in your audience is interested in writing to an inmate, I will supply guidelines from our program, sample letters to get you started, and I will tell you it's a life-changing experience. You heard Marilyn talk about her experience. It's just, you make a whole new set of friends, I feel like I have over these years, writing to people in prisons and jails. But I've asked you for your prayers. I've asked you to share your books with me, to recycle them so that we can send them into prison. If you're downsizing, if you're trying to get rid of books, and if you can't get them to me, take them to your local jails, take them to your local prisons. They normally will not accept them from you. They have to come from a publisher, which is why if you get them to us, we're a publisher, we can get them out into something else. So if you're interested in any of the ways you can help, please let me hear from you. And I want to send you, anyone who's interested, a free book that is a wonderful book. Marilyn mentioned it earlier. It's called Unlocking Hope, and it consists of testimonials by people, men and women, who have written us over the years about the efficacy of the prison program, how it has helped them or changed their life. And if you're ever having a down day, you pick up this book and just open it at random, and I guarantee you will start to feel differently. You'll start to feel better. You'll start to feel grateful for your own life and your own particular problems, whatever they might be. Mr. Cayce said, our job is to change the problems into stepping stones. We're to change the stumbling blocks, the things that trip us up, into stepping stones or helps or aids. And you learn to do that through working on yourself and meditating.
Well, what a wonderful piece of information. Judith, you want to give us the information of how to reach you again so they can get that book called Unlocking Hope by Richard Copeland, which is a wonderful book to read. It is very uplifting. Or if they want to reach you for the donations or writing, do you want to give us your information?
I'll be glad to. Our toll-free number at A.R.E. is 800-333-4499. If you need me for some reason, you can reach me directly at 1-757-457-7120 here at work. If you email me, if you want me to send books or us to send books to somebody in prison, email us, all lowercase, prison@edgarcayce.org. That's prison@edgarcayce.org. If you need to contact me directly, you can just write me, judith.stevens@edgarcayce.org. And if you're interested in going to our website to find out more about Edgar Cayce, about the Association for Research and Enlightenment, our programs, our plans, our projects, you can go to our wonderful website, capital E, Edgar, capital C, Cayce.org. Edgar Cayce, one word, no space, .org. I think that's what you need.
Well,
Anything
thank you
else, Marilyn?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I really hope people take this to heart today. This is an important program today. Everybody wants peace on earth, but the peace begins with us. And we find peace through those study groups and through the Search for God material, through the books that you send to them that has this kind of information to turn our lives into being peaceful. We can create the peace when we create it within ourselves and share it with others. So this is a wonderful program to help spread peace on earth, and that's what a lot of people pray for all the time. So this is your opportunity to apply it into your life.
And just think, the people that are in prison are coming out at some point. Most of them will return to a community. We want them to return to a community totally different from the way they went in. We want them sensitized. We want them positive. We want them work-oriented, both on themselves and outwardly. And that's what happens to people who come into this material. So write me, call me, fax me, email me, and we will send you that book.
Wonderful. Well, Judith, one thing you brought up in the information you sent me, and I'm curious about this, there's a book called The New Jim Crow by a lawyer named Michelle Alexander. When we come back, could you give us a little bit of a short understanding about what that's about and help us to understand what's going on? So I'm Marilyn Redmond at Love Never Fails, and we're coming to you on the BBM Global Network TuneIn Radio. And stay in until you can find more out about New Jim Crow. I am your host, Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails. We are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and we've had a wonderful talk today with Judith Stevens, and she's going to tell us about a book I just now found out about recently by Michelle Alexander, who is a civil rights lawyer. What did you find out about this book, Judith, that you'd like to share with us?
Well, my son actually gave me the book. He writes for the local black newspaper here in Norfolk, Virginia. And he heard about her through that, and he got the book, and we went to see her when she came to Norfolk. She spoke at a local college, and we went to hear her, and she was dynamic. She is not only a civil rights lawyer, but an advocate and a legal scholar, and she has been working around the country, and this book talks about mass incarcerations as the new Jim Crow. And if you look at the composition of people in prison, they are largely brown and black as opposed to white. And they are being used, incarceration is being used in a controlling sort of way. She doesn't say this lightly. She backs it up with facts. She goes all the way back to the Civil War area and works forward. I will recommend this book to anyone. It is a very important book for us to read because we've noticed that prisons have grown exponentially everywhere, and also the prison population. We have more people in prison in our country for our population than many larger countries, and we continue to build more prisons and put them in. We are punishing people. We are not rehabilitating them.
Oh, I agree with that one. And as punishment doesn't really solve anything. It actually makes them dig their heels in deeper. And if you can find alternatives of ways to handle your life, they don't need to be punished. They just need information of how to move forward and leave the past behind.
Right. Put them in self-help groups and teach them how to change their reactions and control their anger. I mean, that can all be done. And then teach them meaningful trades, not making license plates, please.
Well, there are better ways to handle our lives than we've necessarily been taught in the past.
Yes. Well, remember, there was a time when Mr. Cayce was arrested. He was in jail twice in 2 different times for giving readings where they sent someone in and arrested him. And from what his son, Hugh Lynn, said, he had people spellbound in that cell talking to them.
I believe that. Well, I want to thank you, Judith. You have been a very informative person. You have provided a lot of information for our listeners today. I know that they've learned a lot that they might not have thought about before, and you're very inspirational. So thank you so much for being with us and joining us today. And I wish you a very good evening because you really deserve it. You were a really great gal to have on the show. So thank you very much.
You are so welcome, Marilyn. Thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Well, thank you. And I want my listeners to remember my website at angelicasgifts.com, where you'll find out more about my talents, and check out my books at amazon.com. And you'll see my latest book is Finding Reality Beyond Fear, and that's a book I've been sending out to the prisons, well, along with some of my other books. And I have a blog called marilynredmondbooks.blogspot.com. And all my lectures, interviews, and spiritual information is still on YouTube, so you can check out my YouTubes in the channeling on that particular space. See you next week. We have another program coming along about guilt and shame, prayer and meditation next week, so how we can handle those things and heal them. So stay tuned for next week. We'll see you then. I am Marilyn Redmond, your host, and you're listening to Love Never Fails, and we have been coming to you on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
You've been listening to Love Never Fails with your host, Marilyn Redmond. Go beyond old ideas and understandings and hear Marilyn's solutions to healing and a higher consciousness. Each week, here on Marilyn Redmond's Love Never Fails.